This is the Your Career Story podcast, and you're listening to episode 48, How to Reposition Your Career So That You're on the CEO Track. Welcome to Your Career Story podcast, a show that's designed for rockstar professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jenna Viviano, ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Your Career Story podcast. I'm your host, Jenna Viviano, and I am thrilled to have you here today because today we are going to be talking all about what it looks like to be on the CEO track and what that means for you personally, so that you're going to get value out of this even if you don't have some aspiration to be the CEO at a company. This is more about being the CEO of your life, and if you want to have an upward trajectory in your career, which if you're listening to this podcast, my assumption is that you do. So we're going to walk through what is the actual definition of a CEO. How does that relate to our life? We're going to look at and see, does your life match up and are you acting like the CEO in your life, and what to do if you're not? This is going to be a really fun episode. I really enjoyed doing some research for this, looking at different studies and looking to understand what makes a really great CEO, and then being able to kind of map that to how we show up for ourselves in our career. So I'm really excited to share that with you. But before we get into that, I wanted to share a review that we got this past week. I haven't done this in a while, but I was so moved by the review that I just had to share it with you all. And if you are listening to this podcast and you've been listening for a really long time and you've been enjoying yourself, please give us a review. Please give us some stars up over on the iTunes app. That really helps us get credibility within the application so that more people can find this podcast and get some value out of it. So thank you so much. This one is from Rachel, and she titled it, Worth Your Time and Attention. She said, now that I have listened to all of Jenna's podcasts to date, I feel it is time to give her a well-deserved review. As an Enneagram 1 and an auditor, I am wired and have been trained to find issues and fix them. So as you might guess, I rarely give out 5 stars. However, Jenna's and her guests' ability to give practical, actionable, and kind but firm career content in a storytelling format has earned 5 stars from me, as her work has transformed my mindset about how to pursue my career and life goals. Jenna, thank you for your time, hard work, and dedication. It does not go unnoticed. Thank you, Rachel, for taking time out of your day to give us this review. I can't tell you how much that made my day when I read this. And for those of you that are content creators, you know what it feels like when somebody appreciates the work that you're able to put out, because sometimes it feels like, hey, we're producing content. Does anybody listen or care, right? And so it was super honored. I'm just honored that you would take time out of your day to do that. So again, if you've been listening to this podcast, it's been super valuable for you. Please give us a review on iTunes because we would love to hear how this show is impacting you. Also, if you're listening and you've been listening for a while, connect with me on LinkedIn and tell me that you've been listening to the podcast and tell me which episode has been your favorite or the most impactful for you. That helps us drive our content strategy for what we're going to produce, things that's going to be helpful for you and relevant for you. So the more that you interact with us, me specifically on LinkedIn, because that's where I hang out, it's going to give us more fodder and produce more great content for you. So please make sure that you do that. All right, let's jump into this episode and talk a little bit about what the definition of a CEO is. So I did a couple of bits of research, Googled around, looked at some different definitions, and I loved this one simple definition to describe what a CEO is and what they do. They set the strategy to reach the vision. So you hear that again. They set the strategy to reach the vision. So for you in your career, do you have a strategy? Do you have a vision for what you want your career to look like in the future? My question for you is, are you like the person who thinks about more like an employee mindset versus a CEO mindset? My entrepreneurs, you know what I'm talking about here. We have been trained as entrepreneurs to really start to think like CEOs and not think like employees anymore. So for a lot of you that are listening to this program, you probably are an employee. You're probably somebody who has gone to school, worked for somebody else in a 9-to-5 capacity, and you're looking for that next thing that you really want to get that's going to give you more fulfillment in your career. And so my question for you is, do you have a vision for your career? Do you know what you're working towards? I feel like so many of us, and I was guilty of this when I was in the corporate world, We are just going along and we're just hoping that something is going to come across our doorstep. And we are waiting for other people to tell us we're valuable. We're waiting for other companies to tell us we get a shot. When in the reality, what I want you to be thinking about and what I want you to be retraining your mindset to think is, what do I have to offer to the world and what do I want to do? Now, that's not an entitled thing. It's more just like taking ownership of your skill sets and your capabilities and being able to now craft a vision for what your future is going to look like and then set a strategy moving forward. So we help with the strategy portion over here at Jenna Viviano, and we help clients with that. But what is your vision, right? Like, what does it look like for you in your future? What are you envisioning your career to look like 10 years from now? I know that's the worst question in an interview. Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? But I want you to ask that question with no judgment to yourself. Do you know the answer to that question? And if you don't know the answer to that question, it's okay, but you need to start working on that. So let's talk a little bit about, I did some research about what makes a really great CEO. So these are things that you want to be thinking about as you are looking to maybe grow professionally in your career. And then we're going to circle back around to like, what does it mean to be, how do we use these skills that a great CEO has and how do we infiltrate that and use that in our own lives? All right. So these are some skills that I found online of what makes a really great CEO. There was a study done by the CEO Genome Project, so you can look that up. And there was 4 main things that they said really made a great CEO. Now, you'll notice that none of these are technical skills. None of these are technical skills, which I thought was the most interesting observation, because I feel like a lot of us, our entire careers, were like, let's show that we have these technical capabilities, but maybe those technical capabilities, because we feel like those are the hard things we can latch onto to help us in an interview, when really at the end of the day, the soft skills are what makes or breaks somebody going into leadership or not. It's the soft skills that people are talking about in leadership development world. It's the soft skills that apparently make a really great CEO. And here are the top 4. Number 1, making decisions with speed and conviction. Number 2, engaging for impact or excelling at bringing others together. Number 3, being proactive and adapting ahead of time. This is something that's really important for me and what I really drive home with my clients. Number 4, reliably delivering and producing results. So that's what makes a really good CEO. So if you're on the track to be a CEO, you need to be starting to think about, like, how do you make decisions at work? Do you engage for impact and do you bring others along with you? Are you proactive and adapt ahead of time? Do you think ahead to what are the next things that you're going to be having to worry about at work? And 4, are you reliably delivering results? Right? So reliability is a very interesting concept that I was reading up a little bit more when preparing for this. And reliability is like, are you doing the things that you say that you're going to do? Are you delivering on those? And then are you producing results? Because obviously a CEO has to produce results or they're going to be kicked out, right? It's all of those things working together and all those tools in our toolbox that make them really productive in their career and makes a really great CEO. So for yourself in your career, I want you to ask yourself when, okay, we're thinking about, okay, developing these skills to potentially become a CEO. Now I want you to shift your focus a little bit and think about how you show up for yourself in your own career. Do you make decisions with speed and conviction? I have a lot of people that will come to me and they're like, I have 5 different things that I maybe want to do and I'm not really sure which one it is. Totally fine. We all enter into those stages of our careers where maybe we want to be a yoga teacher, an acupuncturist, and maybe we want to be the CEO of a company, Fortune 500, right? We can have those moments. But I think when the rubber meets the road, we have to be really super clear on what we want in our lives and what we want in our career so that we can make decisions. So if we're handed 2 different offers, I'll give you a perfect example. When I was given 2 different offers or to move forward with 2 different companies, I really had to make a decision within 24 hours about which one I was going to move forward with. And it was because I did the work beforehand to understand what did I want in my career and what was most important to me and not getting caught up in the things that other people thought was important for me. So I don't know where you are in your career. This may resonate with you. If you have a decision to make, whether maybe you switch jobs or you stay where you are, you take a sabbatical, wherever you are in your career, making a decision and making it with authority, even if it feels risky, is something that a CEO would do. So are you showing up as a CEO when making decisions for your own career? Number 2, do you engage for impact or excel at bringing others along? This is a really big one. I have found that a lot of people, when networking, right? You network with people to potentially build relationships and develop those over time. My question to you, and you usually do that with people that are your peers or like a couple years older, right? They're maybe more senior in their career. Are you doing that for people that are below you in their career? Meaning like they're not as far along as you are. Maybe mentoring a new grad. Are you bringing other people along with you to help them? Because you know that the people that have helped you in your career have been really impactful for you. Are you doing that and giving back as well? I think that is a really big thing that we miss out on. We're like, how do we get a mentor? I'm like, how do you be a mentor? Be a mentor first, then get a mentor, right? Both of those things I think need to be You need to show up for your career in both ways. And I can guarantee you're going to feel more empowered in your career when you do mentor other people. You're going to feel just good about what you have to offer and realize that you have things that you've done in your career that are really impactful that other people value. So I think all encompassing, you're giving back and you're also boosting your confidence at the same time. So are you bringing other people along in your career? 3, are you proactive in adapting ahead of time? So this is the big one when I talk about networking with folks. Are you proactively networking even when you don't need something? Because if you're only networking when you need something, that's when it feels uncomfortable. And that's when it feels awkward. And that is when it feels really, really weird. So are you being proactive and adapting ahead of time? Are you looking at the trends in the marketplace? Or are you going to wait until, marketing has completely died out, or the print industry, like for people that have been in the print industry and they're like, no, we're going to keep on moving forward and not adapting to what technology was doing? Are you doing that in your career? Are you just not looking left and right at all and not evaluating what's going on in your industry? Is that going to leave you far behind? So showing up and owning, not just putting your head down, but putting your head down and then looking up every once in a while, right? Are you being proactive and adapting ahead of time before it's too late? That's another thing that I recommend when people are thinking about changing careers. Don't wait until you're ready. You should start networking and continually be having conversations with people about where they are in their career, about networking with them, about being open to opportunities should they come your way, right? So I think a lot of us are like, I'm either going to be in work zone or I'm going to be in finding a new job zone. I think that they can be meshed together a lot of the time. A true CEO is always going to be looking for opportunities for their business. So you need to think about this, being a CEO of your own career, and see what are the opportunities that are available to me and how can I get ahead of them so that I'm not in a situation or a position where I want to move so badly that I take the next thing that comes along, just take it and not be the most strategic move for me. So people who are CEOs are strategic. They're not reactive, right? They're very proactive. So are you being reactive in your career or proactive in your career? That's something I want you to ask yourself. And if you have an answer to that and you realize like, I'm really being reactive in my career, message me. I would love to hear your story. And the 4th thing is reliably delivering and producing results. So this is a really big one where I think we need to show up for a career and be excellent in it. So I think it can get really easy when we are not happy at work to kind of slack off a little bit, right? We feel like, oh, I just don't want to be here. I have no desire to be here. This is not what I want for the long term. And then we kind of sort of check out a little bit. And I was having a conversation with my Recruit the Employer folks that are in the program last night. And we were talking a little bit about how do you exit gracefully? And I think that this is reliably delivering and producing results means you do that up until the very last moment. I had my manager, when I worked at the New York Stock Exchange, he said, don't give us a reason not to like you. When I told him I was giving my 2 weeks, he was like, basically what he was saying is, go till you're done, finish well. And so for you, if you're thinking about leaving and you've got one foot out the door and one foot in, that's a really unhealthy place to be because you're not showing up with excellence at work. And you want to never give somebody a reason to just think negatively about your performance. You want to always show up and be the best version of yourself, even if you're not feeling like the best version of yourself. Hopefully that makes sense. So how are you showing up in your life? These are the qualities of a CEO. So are you adapting those CEO-like qualities for your own life? Are you showing up well? All right. Here are some other things I think that are really interesting about a CEO that I found. This is in Business News Daily. And one of the things that they said that makes a really great CEO is somebody who understands the public relations aspect of the brand and the reputation, of developing a brand and reputation for a company. Because the reality is, an organization, a CEO could say one thing and that could change the share price, right? Like their one thing that they say could massively affect. We see that happen with companies that fail miserably. WeWork, perfect example, right? Their CEO was kind of a little loony toony, and that massively affected the trust and the reputation and how that company is now performing because of their lack of reputation, positive reputation, right? So I want you to think about your own personal brand. Are you paying attention to the personal brand? Are you investing in it? Are you paying attention to because your brand is your name is your reputation, right? What are you doing to help cultivate that reputation? What are you doing to help position you as the thought leader and to boost that with integrity, to show what you're capable of doing, to differentiate yourself in the marketplace? I think that skill set of a CEO is something you can absolutely translate over to your career. Like, how are you showing up as a CEO in your career? And how are you using that experience or your capabilities to really frame and present yourself publicly, for lack of a better phrase, to the world about what you have to offer? Are you cultivating that personal brand? Let me guess. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not looking for any job. You're looking for the right job. And the right job is not at your current company. You're tired of feeling underpaid, overworked, and like your career is in the hands of the employer. You're ready to make some moves, but you're overwhelmed by all of the options. You don't know how to sell yourself, and you have a nagging feeling that your lack of confidence is keeping you from success, not to mention negotiating the amount you're worth. If this sounds like you and you're a mid to senior level career woman who makes over $100,000, we have the 4-step solution just for you. Our signature program, Recruit the Employer, is designed to help women leaders get clarity on what they want to do, market to their dream jobs, and negotiate thousands more. Using a personal branded approach, we equip you with the tools to sell yourself in a non-sleazy way, think like a C-suite leader, and ultimately take back control of your career. To apply, head on over to www.jennaviviano.com/apply. And over the course of 8 weeks, you'll network with other female leaders at similar stages. Learn how to double your salary and solidify your career story. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, that dreaded resume and LinkedIn profile, yeah, we do that for you. Because of the intimate nature of this program and limited spots, we are very, very selective about who we invite into this program. So to see if you'd be a good fit, again, head on over to www.jennaviviano.com/apply to apply to Recruit the Employer today. We cannot wait to support you. All right, back to the episode. So here's how to know if you're not on the CEO track. We talked a little bit about what makes a really great CEO. Here's how to know if you're not on the CEO track. You're not super focused. So CEOs are laser focused. They have a vision and a strategy and they go after it, right? That's what the definition was at the very beginning. So if you're feeling not focused right now, you may not be on the CEO track. That is okay. We can revert you back. We're going to talk about some practical tips to reposition yourself if you're feeling like, I am not focused. I have no clarity. I don't know where I'm going. The one way you can do that is to get some focus, right? A CEO is focused. So if you're not focused, you're probably not on the CEO track. Second thing is you're climbing the ladder. You're climbing a ladder, right? You're going up, you're getting promoted, but you're climbing the wrong ladder. So a CEO knows where they're going and knows where they're headed and knows what they want to get out of their career and get out of, or even just when a CEO is thinking about their business, what the goals are, what the vision is, and what the things are that they want to achieve. They usually don't climb the wrong ladder. So you may be climbing a ladder, but oh my goodness, you're about to hit the top and you're like, this is not what I thought it was going to look like. So if you are climbing the wrong ladder, you may not be on the CEO track. The next one is a really big one. And we talk about this a lot in my career coaching program. It's letting everyone else tell you what you should be doing. So I see a lot of people in their career, male and female, but specifically for my females, waiting for someone to give them an opportunity or waiting for somebody to let them tell them what they deserve to be paid or tell them it's like deferring to everybody else before actually evaluating what do I want. Now it's okay to say like, okay, what's the market paying for this type of role? I'm not talking about that. I'm saying you need to first decide for yourself, what do you want? And then to start to proactively go after it. There are no more if you want to be on the CEO track, you can no longer be letting everybody else in every other company tell you if you're valuable, tell you if you're worth it, tell you if you have something to offer. You do. Everybody is unique. Everybody has their own unique skills and capabilities. And you have to own that and then leverage that and then tell a company why you could be useful to them, right? What value you bring to them. Don't wait for them to tell you, yeah, you're worth it or not. You have to internalize that first, because here's what the deal. When you start going after jobs and start finding jobs, you're going to just accept whatever comes your way, which is error number 1. Or 2, you're not going to have any direction of what you actually want to go towards. Or 3, you're going to have an emotional roller coaster experience where if you're letting every other company tell you if you're worth it or not, or if you're taking every rejection very personally, it's going to derail your efforts. You're going to lose focus. Your confidence is going to be deflated. And some of that is natural, right? Like we're humans. We cannot be robots where it's going to hurt when we get rejected. But the sooner we get friendly with rejection, the sooner that we get comfortable with being told no, the sooner we're going to get to a yes. And so I want you to be thinking about, like, if you want to be on the CEO track, you cannot let others' perception or other people's opinions really infiltrate and define who you want to be in your career and how you want to show up. You get to define that because you're the CEO of your career. Nobody else has to wake up. My dad told me this when I was telling him I was going to make a big career transition from finance and go work at in sales at a startup. My mother was very nervous about it. Naturally, I was living in New York City. I was cutting my salary. And my dad said to me, you know what, honey, at the end of the day, you're the only person that gets up in the morning and goes to work. I don't go to work for you. Your mom doesn't go to work for you. A spouse or a friend won't go to work. You're the only one that has to show up every single day and go to work. You have to be happy with that. And so what I think that did is it gave me the freedom to realize like, I can decide what I want to do next. I can move towards finding opportunities that are going to fit that thing that I want, and then be very okay with that, right? So it's all about perception and how you show up for yourself in your career. So my question to you is, where are you showing up, or are you letting other people define what you want to do next in your career? The next thing that I want to talk about is, are you waiting for someone to tell you that you're qualified? So I think a lot of people are like, I just want recruiters to come to me. Just come to me, recruiters. Let's just fix my LinkedIn profile so that it's so optimized. It doesn't read well, but it's got all the keywords in it, or my resume. No, I don't want you to be thinking like that. You're better than that. I won't want you to wait for someone to tell you that you're qualified. I want you to decide for yourself what you're qualified for and then move forward. And I also want you to be stretching yourself to determine, is this role, a big thing about CEOs that I was reading is that they take a big career risk. They take a role or they apply for roles that they're maybe not qualified for, quote unquote. They're underqualified for is what I like to say, not unqualified for. They're underqualified for, but they go for that leap and they press themselves and they push themselves. Being a CEO is not easy. This is not easy stuff. This feels really hard and there's a lot of tension that happens. Good. If that's happening for you and you're getting emotional about it, you're probably going in the right direction. And the other thing to know that if you're not on the CEO track, this is the last one, is if you're focused only on the busy work. So you only have your head down and you're focusing on what's exactly in front of you, but you're not looking up to the left or to the right to see what else is out there for you, what other opportunities for you. The other thing is if you've decided that you want to make a transition and you're only focusing on applying online, you're doing that wrong. That's not a strategy. That's being lazy. If you're only applying online, that's being lazy. Sorry, hate to break it to you, but that's the truth. So if you are looking, you need to have a strategy moving forward. If you decided time to make a career change, you've got to have a clear vision. You've got to have a strategy in place, and you've got to have some tools in place to help you get from point A to point B. You've got to do that if you want to be considered on the CEO track in your own life. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some practical tips you can implement in your own life if you feel like, hey, I'm definitely not on the CEO track like I would like to be. I'm not thinking like a CEO, being the CEO of my own career. I want to adopt some habits or some principles or some thought patterns that are going to put me more in line with what it looks like to actually be a CEO of my career or to be on the CEO track in my life. So there's a difference between micro habits and macro thinking, and we're going to talk about each one of those. So for micro habits, those are the things that you can control. I have just realized in my career, there is a lot that I cannot control. Even though I think that I have control and I have the illusion of control, there's a lot of things that I can't control. I can't control what the economy does. I can't control if somebody wants to buy from me. I can't control if somebody wants to give me, I cannot control a lot of things. But here's what I can control. I can control my thought patterns. I can control my habits and routines, and I can control my perception of myself. So it's very easy, I think, for a lot of people when we're in our career, we're being told we're giving, constructive feedback or we are not being accepted for a job that we want. We can really internalize a lot of that and utilize that to defend ourselves that we are not capable of doing something. And so what I think that CEOs do really well and how to shift yourself into a CEO mindset is to think about yourself how a CEO would think about themselves. A CEO is going to say, I'm really good at this one thing, and a company would be really lucky to have me to help them reach their goals. There's a little bit of an ego in there, right? Which I think we all need a little bit of an ego. And if you're listening to this and you've always thought kind of in a self-deprecating way towards yourself, which I feel like a lot of women do. Some of this makes me feel really uncomfortable because you're like, that is so egotistical and narcissistic. And the reality is if you're thinking that, you probably don't have to worry about it. if you're worried about sounding narcissistic, you probably don't have to worry about it. So I would love if you could just train your brain just a little bit. Think like, I'm coming to the table. I've been gifted with these gifts. I have something to offer. Even if I'm a rookie on my first day, which is, by the way, a CEO is a rookie on their first day, right? Not everybody is birthed out being a CEO. It is something that happens over time. There's skill sets you learn. There's things that you learn on the job. Like a CEO is learning on the job just as much as you're learning on the job when you start your new job. So I think that's something to help us remind ourselves that like it's okay if we're not feeling totally prepared 100% of the time. So a CEO level mindset is going to, listen to people's feedback in a way that's going to help them improve, but not necessarily tear them down. So I think a lot of us will get feedback or will, get a rejection from a job that we really wanted, and we'll internalize that and use that almost like to build a case against ourselves internally. Like, I knew it. I was not qualified for that job. Nobody wants to hire me. And then we go down this massive like drain or cycle where we just get totally lost in thoughts of the, being the hums of not enoughs is what I call them. So a CEO level mindset elevates themselves above that, listens to the things that they need to listen, but doesn't internalize them. I've used this analogy before, but I really think that when we get feedback or when we have something negative happen to us in our career that we can't control, right? Because there's a lot of things we can't control. We can either treat those words, like let's say, for instance, let's use the example of you apply for a job that you felt maybe underqualified for. And there is a difference, by the way, between unqualified and underqualified. And one of my friends actually posted about this on Instagram. And unqualified means you just are not capable of doing that job, like not capable. Underqualified maybe is you don't have as much experience, but you could do it if given the opportunity. So I think a lot more of you are underqualified than you're unqualified. So let's just first say that you probably are more underqualified than unqualified. But if let's say you get a rejection back from a company you really wanted to be a part of, and you start cycling down the drain. Instead of doing that, what I want you to do is take those words, take the feedback, instead of letting it pierce you like a dagger. There's like three different ways to take feedback. It's either going to pierce you like a dagger. It's going to be like one of those irritating burrs, like, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're kind of like you see them in the forest, right? And they get stuck to your clothes and they can't really seem to get off. You have to kind of push them off a little bit. They're not exactly, they're not penetrating your heart, but they're stuck there and a little irritating. Or you can take feedback like a ping pong ball, where you can take that information and it bounces right off of you. And you take what you need from it and then you let it release it. I think a lot more of you, and what CEOs I feel like have to do really well in order to survive, is they need to move definitely away from taking feedback or negative criticism like a dagger, moving it more towards the burr or towards the ping pong ball. Really great CEOs are able to divide and decide which things are actually relevant for them to internalize and which things are not. So for you, where are some areas in your life that you can be adopting more of that ping pong ball mentality? I want you to be thinking about that. That's something that you can control and to work on. We also talk about that a lot in the Recruit the Employer program. That's one of the biggest things. One of my biggest victories this past week was one of our clients in the program. I always asked them what their work win was, and she goes, "My mindset is totally changing." And she was so happy about it. It was great. It was fantastic. And that's the kind of stuff that I want you guys to be thinking about, is like, what if you could think about yourself differently in your career, and how would that manifest for actual opportunities that come your way? I think those two things are very much coincide, and they very much reflect upon one another. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a morning routine. So I am not always good at this, so I'm going to say this very transparently. But I have read a ton of information on this, and really successful CEOs have a really solid morning routine and have alone time. That's really the key about a morning routine. It doesn't have to happen in the morning, but it can really be about having that time alone where you can have time to process and to think, and you're not just go, go, go. The last thing you want to be doing is to be getting out of bed and hopping on your email. You do not need to do that. That's not going to you're not going to solve the world's problems by doing that first thing in the morning. You're not going to be healthy if you're doing that. And the biggest thing that you need to be as the CEO of your life and your career is to be healthy, right? Mentally and physically. And so my recommendation is to start to adapt a morning routine that works for you. The other thing that I would recommend from a micro habit of things you can control is saying no more. So a CEO is very comfortable saying no. They're very comfortable saying, "I don't think that's going to work for us. Thank you anyways." They're very comfortable saying no to opportunities that seem really great, but they're actually not in line with the vision. They have to be very decisive. So I think a lot of us, when we get opportunities, for instance, right, we're applying to jobs and we're doing all the work and we get an opportunity and we're just really like, we realize that salary is really important for us in our stage of life. There's no shame in that. But we get an offer that's a little bit less than we really wanted. And we're like trying to figure out if we can make it work, right? The reality is you can say no to that. If it's not going to be right for you, other opportunities will come along. You don't have to live in a scarcity mentality that nothing else will ever come along for you. Okay. So I really want you to practice saying no more and creating boundaries for yourself around work. This is another thing that I feel like CEOs have to be really good at. Not all of them are good at it, but to be a really great CEO, you have to create really firm boundaries. And so for yourself, where are some boundaries being blurred in your work? Where are you allowing a company to tell you what you should be doing versus what you want to be doing? And then the last piece is CEOs often spend money and time on developing themselves. They really invest in their leadership development. They invest on getting a coach. That's just what they do. This is not a plug for me, but they get an executive coach to help them along with the things that they're facing because they know they can't do it alone. They have other people speaking into their lives. They do not live in a silo, right? They've invested in their own career to prepare themselves for the future. So where are you investing in your career? What does investing in your career look like for you? You can define that, what that means. It could look like investing in a coach. It could look like investing in courses. It could look like going to certain functions or networking events. What does that mean for you? But you need to be doing some things to develop yourself personally and professionally. So those are the things, the practical things you can do from a micro level that's really going to help reposition you as a CEO in your career. Now let's talk about some macro thinking. This is something that happens over time. You need to get really clear. We've talked about this in the beginning of this episode, but you need to get really clear on what do you want. When I get on a phone call with somebody and they're like, I need your help. And then they tell me like a zillion different things. And I'm like, okay, what do you want? They're like, that's the $1 million question, Jenna. That's why I'm talking to you, right? Like you have to get super clear on what you want in your career and own that and not be ashamed of it. So that's from macro thinking, how you can think like a CEO is to get clear on what you want and then start building your personal brand accordingly. So for a lot of people, let's say, for instance, that you know that you want to be the chief marketing officer eventually. You don't know how that's going to play out. You don't know the timing of that. That is okay. But you want to start making movements towards that direction. So my recommendation is start building a personal brand about that. Get really clear on what your secret sauce is, what makes you super unique, and start producing content, proactively getting to be on panels, connecting with other people that are CMOs. Put yourself in the vicinity of the people that are going to help shape what your personal brand is and what your public perception is. Very similar to how a CEO has to pay attention to public perception. You also have to pay attention to public perception. You have to start building your personal brand in order to be seen as that thought leader, in order to be seen as the person who is the go-to person for XYZ subject that you want to be expert in. You have to strategically plan that. And then the last thing is you really need to be thinking about what is the next move. So I think a lot of people feel bad about that, but in today's culture, I think it's really important to always be thinking about what's the next quarter turn to make. What's the next move that's going to get you closer to your end goals? Because at the end of the day, a company is only going to be loyal to you for what makes financial sense for them. You've got to pay attention to what is the next thing that you want to invest in, the thing that you want to do, and be looking for those opportunities. You cannot just sit by the wayside and hope something comes your way. You really have to be proactive in that process. You have to understand what is your next move and get really strategic about that. So we've covered a lot today. I want you to tell me, what was your biggest takeaway from this episode? Do you feel like you are on the CEO track, or do you feel like you've had more of an employee mindset and you've taken a back seat to your career and you're ready to get in the driver's seat again? If you're ready to get in the driver's seat again, I would love if you would reach out to me on LinkedIn and say what was the most impactful part about this episode. We try to give you some macro things to think about, and also some just more practical things to get yourself moving in the right direction. As always, we are here to help, and we help people through reframing their mindset around what it looks like to be on the CEO track and taking control of your career and life again. So hopefully this is really helpful. Tell me what your biggest takeaway was, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, you know I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jennaviviano.com/resources. Super simple, for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.